Blessing to have a number of our missionaries with us, and I'd like to ask Brother Kendall Wadley to come and be prepared to give a testimony. Every part of the service is not accidental, it's intentional, and you should be asking yourself as you hear testimonies, specials that are given, whatever the case, how is God speaking to my heart through this person? Maybe someone giving a video or preaching the message, but let's expect God to speak to us. He's desiring to guide us and show us His will. And so let's trust that the Lord will speak to us through each element of the service. Brother Kendall Wadley is a Crown College graduate and has had an extensive ministry in Canada, and we're very grateful for his burden. He's seeking to see churches planted and laborers trained to go all around the provinces and territories of Canada, and God is using him. There are a number of faithful Christian workers throughout Canada, and we're grateful that Kendall's one of them, and we're praying for him. So as he comes to give a testimony, I hope you'll listen carefully and expect God to speak to you.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I want to read one verse and give you a brief update of what is going on lately in Canada. Mark 1:38 is sort of the verse we've taken lately for our ministry, and that is what Jesus said. He said unto them, "Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also. For therefore came I forth." And we always are asking, what is next? And I remember being a student here and Pastor Sexton encouraging us to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. He was always challenging us that way. Historically, I won't go into a lot of detail. Many of you know because I visit here quite a bit, some of the history there. But my wife and I was privileged to become the pastor there 11 years ago in December. We did not have a building. We had a storefront. And we were meeting in a room. You could barely fit about 26 people in there. We outgrew that building and we needed to buy our own property. In Canada, if you don't own your own church building, people think you're kind of cultish. So you need to have a traditional church building in many ways. It helps your testimony. And so we're grateful for the opportunity because many people don't own their own church building. And the Lord provided a building about 9 years ago. It was an Anglican church. You would call it an Episcopalian church here in America. We went there and the Lord began to bless. We started out with about the first Sunday in that building, we had 21 people. A year later, we had 12 people. And sometimes that's how it goes. And the Lord began to add visitors and visitors and visitors. Most recently, we had a baptism service. Maybe about 7 months ago, we had about 120 people there. And the Lord truly blessed. But on a given Sunday, we'll have anywhere from 60 to 70 people that regularly come there. And that's in North Bay, Ontario at Near North Baptist Church, the church I pastor. About 5 years ago, we were able to establish an outreach about an hour and a half west of us in a city called Sudbury, Ontario. So north of Toronto, when you're talking about Ontario would be like saying Tennessee, like the state. Ontario is a province. We are in northern Ontario. North Bay is the first town in northern Ontario, but in northern Ontario, the largest town is Sudbury. There's 167,000 people. 4 people die a week in Sudbury of drug overdose. So it's a very difficult city, a very dark city spiritually. We've taken students here. Some of you have had the opportunity to stand on a street corner and do open air preaching, and we get much opposition in the city of Sudbury, but we're praying that the Lord raises up a team of 5 laborers there to go there to reach that city. And we go there for many different events like Christmas carol services, Easter services, all of those things. But we're praying in God's timing, a church will be chartered and established in that city. The Lord's doing a great work there. In 2021, we were contacted during COVID. There was a church 5.5 hours north of us. And there's a famous pastor in history called T.T. Shields in Canada. He planted many churches. And a church he planted way up north was called the Kapuskasing Baptist Church. There were 3 people left in that church. And I had a friend who was connected with that church. And that friend began to speak to those people and tell them that our work, he explained to them that I had the privilege of being a part years ago of the work in England. And I had the same burden to plant churches in Canada. And so they arranged for me to come preach. They asked me to come preach. I went there 3 times. And they really just donated our property to our charity, their property to our charity. So we've had that property 2.5 years. There's 3.5 acres there. There's a church building there that would hold about 100 people. And there's a parsonage there, about 1,600 square foot. And the Lord really opened that door. A week after we got the ownership of that property, the pipes burst. They froze and burst. But the Lord provided all the inside to be done through the insurance because we just had to pay the $1,000 deductible. So the house is there, ready for a pastor. That work has not had a pastor in 5 years. The Lord's begun to truly bless. About last Christmas, I had a friend who's a Christian who doesn't come to our church. He's not a member. He sat with me and he said, we were going out for coffee. In Canada, we drink lots of coffee. And we sat down and he said, did you want to go with me somewhere to see one of my properties? And I said, well, I guess. He said, I have to check on it just to make sure everything's okay. And it was a storefront in the dead center of North Bay, Ontario, right in the center of town. And so I went with him, just being a friend of his. We went on several trips together. I didn't think much of it. He took me to this storefront, and there are 2,000 square feet in this storefront. 8 office spaces, and it was empty. And he walked me through there, and he said, if you know of anybody who would like to rent this, it helps my insurance to have somebody in here. I said, well, if I think of somebody, I'll let you know, but I didn't think of me. And about a day later, I began to pray about it and think, we could really expand what we're doing. We would want to start a Reach North training center to train our own young people through the things that we've been taught at Crown College, take the same curriculum, teach them. We'd have the School of the Bible. We would have an opportunity to have classrooms. We would have a charity office. We would have a bookstore to be able, there is no bookstores really about 2 to 3 hours from us. You can't find a Christian bookstore in that area. You have to drive about 2 hours to find that. And we would have to bring all those books there. And so our burden was to start a good Christian bookstore in that area. And so, and to have a library for the students in our training center. And so we began to pray about all these things for a couple of days. I didn't tell him. I said, if somebody was interested in renting, I didn't say I was interested. I said, if I knew somebody was interested, what would the rent be? Because that normal rent would be about $2,000 to $3,000 a month, all inclusive. And he said, for you, it would be really cheap. And I said, how cheap? He said, how does $1 a year sound? I said, that sounds great. I'll take that. So we took it and we began work on it. And in the fall break, we had 10 students from Crown College who came up. We moved old antique furniture up there. We've got books that people have donated for our student library. It's exciting. And we've been painting the rooms. We now have to fix the roof. And we've got lots of other cosmetic work to do and tear down a couple of walls and move in it. The Lord is really at work. Currently, right now, 4 nights a week, other than our School of the Bible, we are training 4 young adults your age. Each evening, I train them at least 2 to 2.5 hours a night with the same curriculum I've been taught here at Crown College. And once that building is finished, we'll be working on there. I'm just asking you to pray for that. We always talk about laborers, but God's always advancing. Thank you for this opportunity.
Amen.